Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves, because the courtroom just turned into a reality show finale nobody was ready for. What happens when love collapses under oath? What do you do when whispers turn into testimony and secrets spill louder than a judge's gavel? Today, the internet is on fire for one reason and one reason only. Yandy just broke down in court and said the words that changed everything. I want a divorce from Mendeecees. Yes, you heard that right. Not a rumor. Not a blurry screenshot. Not a late-night blog post. This time, it happened under the harsh lights of a courtroom, with cameras rolling and the world watching. Tears. Trembling hands. A voice cracking just enough to feel real. And suddenly, a relationship once sold as unbreakable is now hanging by a legal thread. But here's the question nobody can stop asking: what pushed her to this point? Was it betrayal stacked on betrayal? A secret life that finally surfaced? Or was this the moment Yandy decided she was done protecting someone else's lies? Stay right here, because what unfolded next wasn't just emotional, it was explosive. And trust me, this was only the beginning. This is a fictional, dramatized story created purely for entertainment. The moment the hook ended, the atmosphere inside that courtroom shifted from curiosity to pure tension. You could feel it, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Yandy sat there, hands folded tightly, eyes glossy but focused, as if she'd already replayed this moment 1,000 times in her head. Across the room, Mendeecees avoided direct eye contact, his posture stiff, jaw clenched, the body language of a man who knows the story is no longer in his control. Let's be clear about why this moment hit so hard. Yandy and Mendeecees weren't just another celebrity couple. For years, they branded themselves as battle-tested, unbreakable, the we survived everything duo. Legal trouble, public criticism, social media storms, every time, they presented a united front. Or at least, that's what we were meant to believe. Because behind the filtered photos and carefully worded captions, sources now claim the cracks had been forming for a long time. According to whispers circulating long before this court appearance, trust inside the marriage had been slowly eroding. Missed calls. Sudden trips that didn't quite add up. Conversations that ended with more questions than answers. At first, fans dismissed it as internet gossip because haven't we heard it all before? But this time, the energy was different. Insiders allege Yandy wasn't just dealing with rumors, she was dealing with patterns. Repeated ones. As proceedings began, the judge barely finished laying out the formalities before Yandy's legal team set the tone. Calm, precise, almost surgical. They weren't there to create chaos, they were there to document it. The narrative they presented wasn't loud, but it was heavy. Emotional abandonment, repeated deception, and a marriage strained beyond repair by secrets that refused to stay buried. Then came the turning point. Yandy stood. Her voice didn't shake at first, which somehow made it even more unsettling. She spoke about loyalty, about standing by someone when the world turned its back. She spoke about sacrifices, personal, emotional, and financial, that rarely made headlines. And then she said it. Not dramatically. Not for effect. Just plainly, she no longer wanted to remain married to a man she felt she no longer recognized. The courtroom reacted instantly. Subtle gasps. People shifting in their seats. Pens pausing mid-note. Because this wasn't an emotional rant, this was resolve. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was drawing a line. Online, the reaction was nuclear. Clips from the hearing spread within minutes. Comment sections filled faster than anyone could refresh. Some praised her strength. Others questioned her timing. And of course, there were those who asked the inevitable question, why now? Why choose this moment, in this setting, to finally say she was done? Anonymous sources were quick to jump in. One claimed this wasn't a sudden decision at all, but the result of months of private confrontation and failed attempts at clarity. Another suggested the courtroom was the only place left where the truth couldn't be edited, deleted, or spun. And perhaps most damaging of all were the allegations that Yandy had discovered details she could no longer ignore, details that reframed everything she thought she knew about her marriage. Mendeecees, for his part, remained silent. No outbursts, no dramatic interruptions. Just a man listening as the version of his marriage presented to the world unraveled piece by piece. The contrast was striking, her calm determination versus his restrained disbelief. It was clear this wasn't just about divorce, it was about control of the narrative, and for the first time, Yandy had it. By the time the session paused, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This wasn't a rumor dressed up as news. This was the beginning of a very public unraveling, and whatever came next was guaranteed to be messier, louder, and impossible to ignore. As the court reconvened, the tension didn't just return, it multiplied. This was no longer about whether a divorce would happen. The real question now was why it took this long. And that's where things got messy. Yandy's legal team began laying out a timeline that, according to alleged insiders, had been quietly building for years. Not days, not weeks, years. They spoke of financial inconsistencies that didn't match public statements, luxury expenses routed through shell accounts, business meetings that coincidentally overlapped with unexplained absences. The implication was clear without being stated outright. The marriage wasn't just emotionally fractured, it was operationally divided. Two lives running in parallel, intersecting only when the cameras were on. Then came the so-called leaks. Screenshots that conveniently appeared online minutes after being referenced in court. Voice notes, never played, but heavily described, where tone and timing raised more questions than answers. Anonymous sources, allegedly close to the inner circle, claimed Yandy had been warned more than once. She didn't want to believe it, one quote circulated. She thought loyalty would eventually be returned. That line alone ignited the internet. Public reaction was immediate and brutal. Some fans felt betrayed, not just by Mendeecees, but by the illusion they'd been sold. Others accused Yandy of knowing more than she let on. Talk shows debated whether this was empowerment or exposure. Comment sections split into camps, team accountability versus team timing. And right in the middle of it all sat the court, attempting to separate fact from frenzy. What really escalated things was the discussion of influence. Allegations surfaced that certain narratives had been actively managed behind the scenes, PR moves disguised as reconciliation, silence framed as strength. If true, it suggested this marriage wasn't just personal, it was strategic. A brand held together with appearances and carefully controlled damage. Mendeecees' response finally came, but not how anyone expected. No denial. No fiery rebuttal. Just a measured statement expressing regret that private matters had reached this point. That was it. And somehow, that restraint spoke louder than any argument. Critics called it calculated. Supporters called it maturity. Either way, it didn't slow the momentum. Speculation around legal consequences intensified. Would financial disclosures open doors to deeper investigations? Would other names be pulled into the narrative? The court didn't answer those questions, but the public already had their theories. Threads multiplied. Videos analyzing body language went viral. Every pause, every glance, every legal phrase was treated like a clue. By the end of the day, one thing was obvious. This wasn't just a marriage dissolving. It was a carefully maintained image cracking under the weight of too many unanswered questions. And as the story continued to unfold, the fallout was no longer hypothetical, it was inevitable. By the final stretch of the hearing, the energy in the room had shifted again, this time from shock to consequence. What started as an emotional declaration had evolved into something far more dangerous: accountability. The judge's questions became sharper, more deliberate, signaling that this wasn't just about dissolving a marriage, but about understanding the ripple effects of what had been presented. Whispers of potential legal fallout began circulating almost instantly. Analysts online speculated about audits, contractual disputes, and whether certain business arrangements mentioned indirectly in court could trigger deeper scrutiny. If finances were intertwined with secrecy, as alleged, then this divorce could expose far more than feelings. It could expose systems. And systems, once questioned, tend to crumble loudly. Outside the courtroom, the public response reached a fever pitch. Sponsors reportedly began distancing themselves. Scheduled appearances were quietly postponed. Industry insiders hinted that meetings were being canceled behind closed doors, not because decisions had been made, but because uncertainty is bad for business. The phrase "wait and see" became the most common response from anyone remotely connected. Yandy, meanwhile, appeared resolute. Sources claimed this wasn't a woman acting out of impulse, but someone who had reached the end of her silence. Her demeanor suggested closure, not bitterness. That distinction mattered to her supporters, who framed the moment as reclamation rather than revenge. "She's choosing herself," one viral comment read. And that scares people who benefit from her staying quiet. Mendeecees' world, however, seemed to be shrinking by the hour. Silence, once his shield, now worked against him. Every hour, without clarification, invited new theories, new accusations, new insider claims. Whether fair or exaggerated, perception had taken on a life of its own, and perception, in the public eye, often becomes reality. Speculation turned to what might come next. Would sealed documents become unsealed? Would additional testimony surface? Would others, previously silent, decide it was finally safe to speak? The story had outgrown the courtroom. It was now a cultural event, one that blurred the line between personal failure and public consequence. As the session adjourned, there was no dramatic outburst, no final monologue, just an uneasy understanding that nothing would return to how it was. The marriage was effectively over, but the story wasn't. In fact, it felt like it was just getting started. Because when silence breaks, it doesn't whisper. It echoes. And now the question shifts from what happened to what happens next. Because when a silence this loud finally breaks, it doesn't just end a chapter, it opens 10 more. Yandy has spoken. The courtroom has heard her. The public has reacted. But is this really the end of the story, or just the moment where everything finally spills out? Ask yourself this: how many truths stayed hidden simply because staying quiet was easier? How many compromises were made to protect an image, a brand, a narrative that no longer matched reality? And when someone finally chooses themselves over the illusion, why does that moment feel so threatening to everyone watching? This isn't just about divorce papers or courtroom statements. It's about power, control, and what happens when someone decides they're done carrying the weight of someone else's choices. Was this inevitable? Or was there a moment, one decision, one lie, one secret, where everything could have gone differently? Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you believe this was an act of courage or a long-delayed reaction? Do you think there's more information still waiting to surface, or has the real damage already been done? And most importantly, who do you think benefited the most from the silence, and who paid the price for it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Read what others are saying. Debate it. Dissect it. Because stories like this don't live in courtrooms alone, they live in public conversation. If this revelation shocked you, hit that like button. If you want to stay ahead of the next twist before it breaks the internet, subscribe. And if you believe no secret stays buried forever, share the story, because the truth doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It waits, and then it explodes.